Hello, boys and girls. I miss you so much. Hi. Today we are going to read one of my favorite books. It's called The Big Orange Splot. Why is it one of my favorite books? Because it's about being you. It's about what makes you special, what makes you unique. And that's why I like this story so much. Okay? This book was written by Daniel Manus Pinkwater. Okay? And it's about a man and his house. And right now that because of coronavirus, we're all day long stuck in our homes, in our houses. Well, we better like our houses, right? Because we are in our houses most of the time. And so let's see what happens to this man's house. The Big Orange Splot. That's the splot. A splot. Mr. Plumbean lived on a street where all the houses were the same. All the houses were the same. Okay? That's Mr. Plumbean. And all the houses are just the same. They are all equal. They all have the same color. They're all brown. They all have 4 windows. They all have the same green roof. They all have the same garden. They are the same, like a uniform. They are all the same. He liked it that way. So did everybody else on Mr. Plumbean's street. This is a neat street, they would say. And then one day, this is a neat street. Neat means kind of like ordenada. This is a neat street. Es una calle ordenada. It's a neat street, they would say. Until one day, something happened. Dun, 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 dun. A bird, a seagull, flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. No one knew why. There's the paint. And no one knew why. He dropped the paint. He dropped the paint, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbean's house. It made a big orange splot on Mr. Plumbean's house. Oh, too bad, everybody said. Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again. I suppose I will, said Mr. Plumbean. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the spot for a very long time, and he went around about his business. The neighbors, los vecinos, got tired of looking at the big orange splot, and somebody said, "Mr. Plumbean, we wish you paint your house." "Okay," said Mr. Plumbean. "Okay." He got some blue paint and some white paint, and he got busy. Blue and white. What color were the other houses? Do you remember? You want to look at the houses again? Did they have blue and white? Mr. Plumbean bought blue and white paint. He painted at night because it was cooler, because Mr. Sun was sleeping there. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue. The walls were white. And the big orange splot was still there. Then he got more paint. He got red paint and yellow paint and green paint and purple paint. Look at that. He's painting his roof in another color. In the morning, the other people from the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same, but Mr. Plumbean's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion of colors. Look! There he is, his house. There is the big orange splot. The house now has a blue roof with now more orange little spots. He has a lion. He has colors all over the place. OMG! So many colors. There was a big orange splot, and there were little orange splots. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions and pretty girls and steam shovels. The people said, "Oh, Plumbean has popped his cork. He flipped his wig. He blown his stack. He dropped his stopper." They went away talking. That day, Mr. Plumbean bought carpenter's tools. That night, he built a tower. A tower is una torre. He built a tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. There is the tower, and there is the clock. The next day, the people said, "Oh, Mr. Plumbean gushed his mush, lost his marbles. He slipped the hawser." They decided they would pretend not to notice. "He is crazy. Let's pretend not to look at it." That very night, Mr. Plumbean got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees and baobabs and thorn bushes and onions and frangipani. In the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. Look at that. All the stuff he bought to plant in his garden. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in the hammock between two palm trees. They saw the alligator on the grass, and Mr. Plumbean was drinking lemonade. There is the alligator. There are the palm trees and the hammock and Mr. Plumbing drinking lemonade. Plumbing! Plumbing, this has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Esta solía ser una calle muy ordenada. Plumbing, what have you done to your house? My house is me. And I am in it. My house is where I like to be. And it looks like all my dreams, Mr. Plumbing said. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door in the house that was next beside Mr. Plumbing's house to go and talk to him. Tell him that we liked it when all the houses were the same and we had a neat street. Tell him to paint his house green again. This street needs to be the same. It needs to be a neat street. The man went to see Mr. Plumbing that evening. They sat under the palm tree, drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Early the next morning, the man went out to get wood, rope, nails, and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbing. Uh-oh. So that's Mr. Plumbing's house. And now the neighbor, el vecino, look what he did to his house. He turned his house into a ship. Now 2 houses look different. What have you done to your house? They shouted to the man. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, said the man who always loved ships and boats. He's like Mr. Plumbing, the people said. He's got bees bzzz, inside his head, in his bonnet, bats in the belfry, knots in his noodles. Then one by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbing late at night. They would sit under the palm tree and drink lemonade and talk about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbing's house, the very next day, that person would set about changing his own house to fit their dreams. That's the neighbor. He made his house a ship, a boat. And look what happened to the neighborhood. Dun, 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 dun. A hot air balloon. OMG. Look at that, a castle. It looks like a Greek temple. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbing and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." Then all the people would say, "Our street is us. We are it. Our street is where we like to be. And it looks like all our dreams." Isn't it important to be able to be yourself, to live your dreams? Huh? It is. That's why I like the message of this story, because Mr. Plumbing fought for his dream, and in the end, he convinced all the other neighbors to be themselves, to live their dreams. And they all understood how important it is to love and to live their dreams.